Hello everyone, welcome back to Too Sweet MTG and welcome to another Cube Tuesdays. In today's episode, we're going to be looking at a cool archetype that I've been running in my cube recently, Gruul Monsters. So what is Gruul Monsters? At its heart, it's a creature beatdown deck. It takes the best parts of green and the best parts of red and smushes them together to make an awesome new combination. We get some solid ramp in green that lets us play our creatures nice and early, we get some good aggressive creatures in red, and importantly we also get some burn from red as well. Apart from the mana dorks, the main creatures that we're running are going to be undercosted beaters. By that I mean the power is more than the mana cost used to cast them in the first place, and also preferably they will have haste, they can get into combat nice and quickly. This is an archetype that has improved an immense amount recently. We've always had good red creatures getting into combat, but recently green has got a ton of good aggressive creatures that have kind of filled the gap in the curve. In particular, there's also been a very good Planeswalker printed in Gruul that has really changed Cube. I mean, have you played with Minsk and Boo? It is a messed up magic card. It is a card that is pack one, pick oneable in many different cubes, and this is the deck that can really take full advantage of it. So that's kind of the overview. How does the deck actually work? So in an ideal world, what we're trying to do is play a mana dork on turn 1, and then play creatures ahead of curve for the rest of the game. Basically, from turn 2 onwards, we're looking to threaten our opponent's life total. Ideally, as I've said, on turn 1, you play a mana dork. On turn 2, you play a 3-drop with haste, attack with it, get in for some damage. On turn 3, you play a 4-drop with haste, and on turn 5, you play a second 4-drop with haste. If your opponent is slacking, they could just be dead on turn 4. I have killed people on turn 4 quite consistently with this deck. In any power level of cube, killing people on turn 4 is just very, very strong, and it's going to be hard for your opponents to deal with. Especially if they are slacking. This is the epitome of a curve-out beatdown deck. This definitely used to be known as kind of like a Fires-style deck, because it used to run Fires of Yavimaya to give all your creatures haste. You would use it to slam down your mana dorks, and then on the same turn, because the mana dorks then have haste, you can then play out creatures and basically just dump your whole hand into play and start attacking with them. Then on the key turn, when all your creatures were swinging into combat, you could sack the Fires of Yavimaya to give all your creatures +2/+2, and in theory overrun them and win the game. But importantly, it is now 2023. A lot of busted cards have been printed over the last couple of years. You can't really take turn 3 off anymore to kind of play a do-nothing enchantment. This deck isn't looking to play Fires of Yavimaya or anything like that. It's just looking to play good creatures. Like in the last couple of years at 3, we've had Laelia the Blade Reforged, Najeela the Blade Blossom, Squee Dubious Monarch, Bloated Contaminator, Endurance, and Moloch all printed. Play these cards. They will just kill your opponents. You don't need the Fires of Yavimaya anymore. Also, while this is called a Monsters deck, we don't really want to go too high with the mana curve. We can definitely go up to 5 drops by running something like a Glorybringer or a Fury, but we don't really want to be hard casting 6 drops in this deck. We'd much rather curve out, dump out our hand, and kill our opponent. Like the only way I see this deck going up to 6 is if you're cheating a 6-drop into play. Like this deck can definitely run a Natural Order, a Green Sun Zeniths, or an Eldritch Evolution, but you're not going to get Terrastodon, you're not going to get Hoof. Like at most you're going to get something like a Primeval Titan or an Old One-Eye. Like every card in this deck, we need the ability to hard cast. The tutors basically give you a little push so you can do something a bit more broken and stupid. But in this deck, the tutors work way better than something like the standard mono green deck. If you compare the play patterns of a Natural Order in just a mono green deck, where you need to spew out a load of mana dorks, then play the Natural Order and specifically get Hoof, that is the main way that that deck can win. Whereas with the Gruul Monsters deck, we've already played a couple of broken creatures. Our opponents are already on less life by the time that we're Natural Ordering, basically for just something to just swing in and finish them off. It doesn't matter when in the game you play them, at any point they're going to be good, which is a big difference between this and mono green. So what are the important cards for the deck? So we've gone over some already, but we'll kind of break them down into individual sections. So firstly, we'll go over the ones that are already going to be in a lot of cubes. So first up, most cubes out there will run some kind of mana dorks, your things like Birds of Paradise, your Llanowar Elves. Cheap creatures that tap and generate mana. These are going to be really important in this deck as they let us play creatures ahead of curve. From the red side, shockingly, most cubes will have some kind of aggressive red creatures. We're thinking things like Ragavan, Bloodfeather Phoenix, Laelia the Blade Reforged, and like your Rabblemaster effects, something like Squee or maybe like old school Goblin Rabblemaster. We've also mentioned burn spells, your lightning bolts, your chain lightnings. These will work as our removal, but are also good at just going to the face if we ever get close enough to finish an opponent off with them. Also, if you've been watching this channel, you'll know that I'm a big fan of initiative creatures in cube. This deck can make really good use of Caves of Chaos Adventurer and Undermouth Adventurer, just because your creature quality is going to be so high compared to your opponents. The next ones are cards you're not likely to see as standard in every single cube, but they do work in other strategies. So we have some other mana dorks, like I personally think Ignoble Hierarch should just probably be in every cube that can run it, but I understand that it might not be in all of them. But because this is a mana dork that taps for green and red, we love it a lot in this deck, and the Exalted that it gives is just very nice at buffing up the damage that we're doing to our opponents. Again, we're trying to kill them as quickly as possible with combat damage. A 2-mana dork that I like quite a lot is Biophagus. This fixes for any color that we want, and also when it's used to tap to generate mana for a creature spell, the creature comes in with a +1/+1 counter on it. Like if you go turn 2 this and turn 3 Questing Beast, you're going to be in a good spot. Another mana dork that I like at 2 is Armored Scrapgorger. This is a nice bit of graveyard hate that can go in multiple different decks to kind of keep Reanimator or combos that use flashback cards like Echo of Eons under control. It does the thing of letting us forward our game plan, but then becomes a beatdown creature in itself. I've generally been very impressed with Armored Scrapgorger. I think it's a fantastic card. As I've mentioned, a lot of cubes will already have a decent amount of aggressive red creatures, but aggressive green creatures isn't something you see in a lot of cubes, but it's something that you do want to consider running if you're looking at supporting this archetype. Hex Drinker is one of the best aggressive green 1-drops out there. It can really just take over a game by itself. If it's left unanswered, it becomes a 6/6 with protection from everything, and that's basically impossible to deal with. It is phenomenal if you get it to that point. We then have some other new aggressive creatures at 3 with Bloated Contaminator, which is a solid 4/4, and then Simium Simulacrum, which can also kind of go in an artifact deck. Also, both these work with any +1/+1 on counter synergies that you might be doing as well, so there is some nice overlap with some other decks there. And then we have our 4-drop Hasty Beaters. A lot of cubes will be running something similar to this anyway, but in this archetype we specifically love cards like Questing Beast, Rampaging Raptor, and Vengevine. What we love is 4 mana, 4 power with haste, and the fact that all 3 of these have really cool upside is very, very nice. If you can curve out and play one of these on turn 3, there is a high likelihood that you're going to be winning that game of Magic. For your Gruul guild slots, we have a couple of cool options that you can consider running as well. Morlock is a really cool card from the Warhammer set. It can fill any point in the curve. It comes in, it can be a removal spell to get rid of an annoying chump blocker while the rest of your team can then swing in. It works really nicely with the Mana Dorks, as we can basically play it at any point in the game. I also then really like Domri Anarch of Bolas in this deck. Yes, I know, I had a go at Fires of Yavimaya earlier for being a 3-drop that does nothing, but Anarch of Bolas does still do stuff on 3. That static ability will be relevant at every point in the game. It just adds the damage that you're doing to your opponents, and it means that the creatures that you've played before this also get bigger and are more likely to be able to swing through for more damage. The +1 ability also means you can put down another creature after this, which we like. And then also it making your creature spells uncounterable on that turn is going to be fantastic against some kind of control matchups. The -2 you won't use as often, but it will be very relevant when it comes up. Again, you could be getting rid of an annoying blocker just to make it easier for your creatures to get through for damage. And also, more removal is always more removal. We do like that. And then obviously we have Minsc and Boo Tireless Heroes. What needs to be said about this card? If you haven't played with it, it is just obscenely stupid. Just keep reading the card. It just does so much in terms of killing your opponents so quickly. Like, it's a 4-mana Planeswalker that also makes a 4-mana Trample Hasty creature the turn it comes down. We can then keep making that hamster bigger, becoming more and more of a lethal threat. And then whenever we want, we can just throw the hamster at our opponents while also drawing a bucket load of cards. Like, honestly, it's an obscene Magic card. We do have some budget options, as I know Minsc and Boo could be a little pricey now. Like, Halana and Alina Partners is a very good budget alternative, or a very good alternative if you're in a slightly lower powered cube setting, because Minsc and Boo does have the possibility to just take over the whole thing. Like, Halana and Alina is still very good at killing your opponent, and is also pennies at the moment, so it's a very solid budget option if you want to go that way with it. So, next question, how good is it? I've been very impressed with this deck. I've also had a lot of fun playing it as well. Basically, if you draft a decent curve, if you draft some ramp, if you draft some interaction, if you draft some big creatures at 4 to kill your opponents, you're going to have a decent deck. And what's nice is your matchups are going to be pretty good. Like, on top of the deck as well, you have quite a good amount of sideboard options. Like, green can be very toolboxy when you want it to be. Like, you have a card like Cankerbloom, which is a very good aggressive version of a Reclamation Sage that is great at answering artifacts and enchantments. You have cards like Endurance and Scavenging Ooze, which can really hurt the graveyard decks. Like, because these can basically both be activated at instant speed, it means you can nerf the Reanimator player out of a game at that key moment when they're about to reanimate something big. Against aggro decks, you should be able to stabilize pretty quickly, but just because your creatures are better than theirs. Like, yes, you'll take some damage in the first couple of turns, and they might kill an early mana dog, that kind of thing. But once you start landing a 3-mana 4/4 or a 4-mana 5/5, they're just not going to be able to deal with that. So you should be able to pull yourself back into a game pretty easily. Against more mid-rangey decks, again, you have good creatures all throughout the curve. Like, your 4-drops can easily hang with the best other mid-range creatures that are going to be in a cube. And more importantly, you have got yours out first, so your opponent is going to be on less life. And also a lot of your stuff has haste, so they can never really fully commit and try and beat you down and kill you, because you can just kill them on the swing back or finish them off with a bit of burn. I always hate playing against control, but in these type of matchups, they can't counter every one of your threats. Something's going to get through at some point. And that's also where a card like Anarch of Bolas comes in. Like, if you can get that out, you know your creatures aren't going to be countered from then onwards, which is really nice. The main thing against control is to not overextend yourself, because basically eating a board wipe when you're empty-handed is going to suck. That is probably when you lose a game. If you can keep like a Rabble Master or a Hasty 4-drop in hand, and then kind of bait out the board wipe and then play it afterwards, you'll hopefully be in a decent enough position to finish off a game. Then against combo, there's a chance that you can just be faster than them. Like, when you curve out properly, you can just kill them on turn 4. And also, you do have burn spells, so you can hold them up to interact with any key combo creatures or combo pieces. So with that out of the way, what kind of cube could you see Gruul Monsters in? What kind of cube would it thrive in? So I personally think this can work in any cube whatsoever. Like in your super high power leveled cubes, Minsk and Boo is still a messed up magic card that is pack one pick oneable in a lot of them. Like even in Vintage Cube, turn oneing a Minsk and Boo or turn oneing a Quest and Beast is still going to be pretty good. I think in the kind of stronger cubes that aren't running power is where this archetype will definitely be the strongest, and that's basically just because mid-rangey decks are more likely to exist in those environments, and this deck can bleed over into mid-range when it wants to. In budget or lower powered level cubes, you can just replace Minsk and Boo, keep everything else, and it'll be perfectly fine and perfectly solid in those environments. There is also definitely a place for this style of deck in something like Peasant or Pauper. You have cards like Blood Range Brawler, Cankerbloom, Yavimaya Iconoclast is a new one that I think could be quite good, Voltaic Brawler, Giant Cindermaw, Hound Tamer, Iramori of the Open Fist, Raging Regisaur, and Security Rocks. These are still good undercosted beaters that can do a lot of work in something like Peasant or Pauper. And also just with power creep, they're always printing more cards like this. Right, so as we kind of come to the end of the video, I think it's probably worth just me going over why I think this is worth running. And basically, it gives green something more interesting to do. Like a lot of the cards we've spoken about are already going to be in red decks. The Burn, the Rebel Masters, those are already going to be in a lot of cubes. Green really has been struggling recently. Like mono green, I don't think is a good deck anymore. This uses the best part of green and just makes it better. Like if you've found in your cube environment that mono green has been struggling, I would highly recommend giving this archetype a go. I think you will really like it. But anyway, we are going to end the video there. Please like, share and subscribe, all that good stuff, and until next time, I'll see you all soon. Goodbye.